Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing part 10, finally, of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. So that's going to be cool. It's kind of a big special. Catching up to JWE very quickly, just because there's been so many wonderful mods coming out for all these animals, and plus a lot of these new species coming out recently as well. So yeah, I'm very excited to get stuck into this one. And we're going to be starting off with a very, very cool little boy. Look, here we are here. This is the golden lion Tamarin, or the golden marmoset. So this is a monkey from the New World, or the Atlantic coastal forests of Brazil. And these guys are sadly an endangered species. These wild populations estimated to be no more than 3,500, with a captive population of about 500, managed between 150 different zoos. And these guys get their name, the golden lion tamarin, from two pretty obvious things. The golden coloration that this guy has, and the mane it sort of has got. And I think that looks pretty nice, even as in the game. And yeah, these guys, that's how they got the name. They get these bright orange, but they do not have carotenoids, which is weird. Which is used usually in nature. Carotenoids are used to make bright colors, but these guys don't have it for whatever reason. So these guys used to live in a huge area, but now they only live about 2 to 5% of the original habitat, which is a couple biological reserves in Brazil, but they have been translocated and stuff in different areas to try and increase their numbers as they're managed as an endangered species. And these guys are active about 12 hours daily, and they sleep in different dens each day. They move around. They live in small groups of being 2 to 8 individuals, where they usually have one male and breeding female, and even more than that sometimes. Look at them go. So these guys, like other smaller monkeys that go around just doing their own thing, foraging. They have a pretty omnivorous diet. They'll eat fruit, nectar, bird eggs, small vertebrates, insects, flowers, a lot of those things. And they use their fingers also to get into leaves and stuff and extract things. It's a term called micro-manipulation, or that's the term for behavior, that they use the elongated hands and fingers to try and grab whatever they can from small crevices and stuff. They're really cool species. I think this mod did justice. So these guys are really cool because they're monogamous, and there's when there's 2 adult males in a group, only one of them will mate with the female, and they usually reproduce depending on the rainfall. And mating at its highest is at the end of the raining season, about late March to mid-June, and births usually come between the September-February rains. So they're sexually mature at about 15 to 20 months, and isn't until 30 months they can reproduce, so there's like a bit of a lag. A lot of species do that as they become like mature enough. I think these are mostly babies, but it's too big. So that's a problem with some species. So these guys also have mutualistic symbiotic relationships with about 96 different species of plants that are found in the forest that they live in, where they rely on these animals to germinate. And these guys are also subject to predation, which is not very good for, obviously, the numbers, especially since they're an endangered species. And they can get preyed on a bunch of things like coatis and a bunch of different smaller animals. That's why they move around different den sites and try to avoid areas that can leave them exposed, like deforested areas. And that leads us perfectly into the reasons why they're endangered. The biggest threats to these guys are illegal logging, poaching, mining, urbanization, deforestation, pet trading, and infrastructure development, and the introduction of alien species into their Atlantic forest homes. So these guys are pretty well managed, though, under the bunch of zoos and in their natural habitat. There's a very well managed species, and have been reintroduced into certain areas around like the 1980s. That's when they were declared endangered, and have been reintroduced in different areas and bred in zoos. And yeah, I think these are wonderful little guys. I think it's funny that the babies are as big as the adults, but obviously that's sometimes the game can only handle so small. I just think it looks wonderful. Let's watch him climb for a little bit. Nope, he's not really having climbing. There we are. I really love the climbing mechanics in this game. Really cool. So we're going to be moving into the far off places of South America again, where we have a look at the next species that lives here. We have got the South American tapir, so also known as the Brazilian tapir, the Amazonian tapir, the lowland tapir, or the main tapir. These are one of the 4 species of the tapirs, which 2 of them are already in game, the Bard's tapir and the Malayan tapir. And this is obviously the 3rd one, and the mountain tapir, which we featured in part 11, which will be cool. Someone made one. So these guys are very, very similar to Bards. They're not quite as big. These guys get to about 1.8 to 2.5 meters long, with 5 to 10 centimeters short tail, and weigh an average 225 kilos. The biggest ones usually range between 150 to 320 kilos and stay between 108 centimeters at the shoulder. The biggest one, but clearly on the biggest side. So these guys have a huge range. They can be found in the Amazon rainforest and river basin in South America, east of the Andes, Argentina, Paraguay, south to the south, and Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador. And they have been seen in channels in Venezuela and Trinidad, but there's believed to be no breeding populations. And I think this is a wonderful, 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 wonderful animal. So like other tapir species, these guys are very, very good divers and able to move quickly over even rugged terrain. They have a lifespan of approximately 25 to 30 years in the wild, and they're mainly preyed on by crocodilians like the Orinoco crocodile and the black caiman, and which is critically endangered, sadly. And the American crocodile only exists in the northern part of South America, so that's safe from them in most of their range, and large cats such as the cougar and the jaguar, which tends to only attack these guys at night. And weirdly, these guys also get attacked by green anacondas, and they are known to, when they have that, they just run for cover. So like other tapir species, these guys are herbivores. They usually feed on leaves, buds, shoots, and small branches where it tears from trees, fruits, aquatic plants, basically whatever it can really get its trunk around. And it's pretty cool. And these guys mate around April, May, and June and reach central maturity at the 3rd year of life. The females go through about a 13-month gestation, so about 390 to 395 days, and will typically have 1 offspring every 2 years. And a newborn South American tapir weighs about 15 pounds and is weaned at about 6 months old. So these guys are considered as vulnerable, as in with a lot of species living in the Amazon and around South America's rainforest. These guys have big issues with poaching for their meat and hide, as well as habitat destruction. And they're recognized as endangered species in their general habitat, but they now kind of doing okay. That's why they're considered vulnerable. So they aren't at pressing conservation as they are endangered or critically endangered. These guys are just vulnerable to human things like obviously deforestation and poaching. So yeah, that sucks. But it's a wonderful animal. I think it looks great. I love the mane. It's also the dang mane tapir, so we can see this cool mane going on. I like how each of the tapirs are still very visually distinct from each other. Very, very cool. Did a good job with these guys. Don't seem to make babies though. You gonna make a baby? Is she pregnant? No. Oh, it is pregnant. Interesting. Probably won't see anything from them. But let's move on to the next guys. We have got the animal from Europe. We're going all the way to Europe now, and we have got a very famous mammal, the fallow deer. So here's an adult male fallow deer, and looks wild. You can see, look at these random things happening, but it's not too bad. So there's 2 species of fallow deer. There's like the common fallow deer and the Persian fallow deer, which is often treated as a own species, but sometimes a subspecies. So these guys get about 140 to 160 centimeters long and 95 centimeters in height, and between 60 to 100 kilograms of weight for a bull, or a big buck. That's probably the best comparison. And these guys are found in a lot of areas. Have been introduced into New Zealand and Australia, and also Argentina and parts of America, but the native range is around Europe and the Middle East, especially with the Persian ones. They come in all sorts of different color variations. And they have these really weirdly shaped antlers. It's kind of like a shovel shape, and they're broad. And believe it or not, these guys are the closest living relative of the Megaloceros, or the Irish elk. So that's another little tidbit for you. So these guys range across huge areas. They've been introduced to areas across the world for hunting, because this is a trophy species. Especially places like Australia and New Zealand, as I mentioned. And they do quite well. So these guys are highly dimorphic, of course, with the antlers, and they rut for about 135 days. In the northern hemisphere, happens around the second half of October and occurs in April in the south because of different seasons in the hemispheres. So these guys have lurks where males will come up and fight each other, then they take the females and have harems and stuff like that. And it varies a lot between like different habitats, environmental variation or size. Can really affect these guys. And after the female like finds the best male and has babies, we'll have a look at the baby here since we're talking about them. So these guys' gestation lasts about 245 days, and usually one fawn is born. Maybe about two can be sometimes. The female can conceive when they're about 16 months old, and then the males can successfully breed at 6 months old, but they do not usually breed until 48 months, so there's a bit of a delay there. So the females can be very cagey just before they give birth and try and find a little secluded area to give birth. And they provide, usually only the females provide investment in the young, while the males just kind of do their own thing. The females are left to raise the baby. So yeah, very wonderful bunch. These guys are considered least concern because they're very common and introduced into a lot of areas around the world for hunting. But still a very nice animal. And we'll have a look at the female for a bit. And I love fallow deer. So I've seen a lot of fallow deer like in parks and stuff. Very charismatic species, I think. And I think would be a worthy inclusion to the game. They did a good job. And next we're going to move on to back to South America again. We're going to have a look at the spectacled caiman, and this has to be one of my favourite mods. Have a look at the little babies. There's a little baby one that's very cute. We're going to have a look at the adults first. We have the adult spectacled caiman. Also known as the common caiman or the white caiman, is a crocodilian that's considered an alligator day. And these guys get pretty big. They get about 1.4 to 2.5 meters long and weigh between 7 and 40 kilograms, with males being both longer and heavier than females. And their diet is very varied, and they commonly consist of crabs, fish, mammals, and snails. Just eat what they can, really, which is pretty cool. And they have this really long snout compared to like the Cuvier caiman. They look small, and they've got this longer snout and quite a bit bigger as well. So these guys are also known to have like group cohesion, which is pretty cool. And they produce a bunch of vocal calls. About 13 are recognized that show that they can talk to each other and communicate. And they reach about sexual maturity between 4 and 7 years old at about 1.2 meters for females and 1.4 for males. Males are slightly bigger because they have to maintain territories. Usually the most dominant individuals mature the quickest, and specimens choose to mate and engage in copulation, or have, do the uglies around May and August during the wet season. So the females, like other crocodiles, they build big mounds and dig it out, and the eggs are usually laid around July, August, and they very rarely nest in the winter. And around 22 average eggs are laid, or they can range between 14 and 40, and larger females lay larger eggs compared to smaller females, and the females stay close to the eggs and protect the young. So like other species, they have temperature determinant sex determination, dependent sex determination, where the temperature often, sometimes in species, it can be higher for males and lower for females, or vice versa. For caiman, it's usually about 32 degrees higher they become female, and for males, it gets below that. That's kind of how it goes. Let him go. Run. We're gonna have a look at the baby while he's there. I think he's very cute. So these guys are found in all sorts of countries. They're found in Brazil, Costa Rica, Honduras, Mexico, Panama, Venezuela, Bolivia, and sometimes often been mislabeled as crocodiles. And there have been invasive populations that have established themselves in southern Florida, so that's for whatever reason. Because it gets too cold in Florida, they can't expand further, but there are invasive populations. So it's not like they're going to go anywhere, but it's just South Florida seems to be the place in America where there's a lot of invasive species, which we really need to get rid of. And the population around the area is about to be 1 million and stable, so that's good. And about 4 million spectral claim to be found in Venezuela, and it's shown to be increasing. So these guys are doing very well. So that's a good sign. That's compared to all the other species on this list, they're doing very, very well. And sadly, a lot of these guys, even though they're least concerned, they still have to deal with issues like escapation from certain areas where they were wiped out. So reintroductions is a good idea. And also, there is obviously destruction of habitat, especially like the wetland and forest habitats that they live in. So it's very, very important to protect those habitats, not only for just the caimans, but for all the species, including the tapias and the tamarins that live there. But no, I think this is a very good mod, and I like it. Most of these are very good mods. They did a good job. And next, we're going to be going all the way back. We're going to see the Harbour Seal with a couple babies. We're going to go with the babies second, but they look very cute, don't they? So we've got the Harbour Seal, also known as common seal. They are found around Arctic waters of the Northern Hemisphere and are the most widely distributed pinniped, and can be found in the Northern Atlantic, Pacific, Baltic, and North Seas. So these guys have very unique spotted patterns, kind of very similar to grey seals. And they have a bunch of different patterns and stuff, and they can get between an adult length of about 1.85 meters long, so about 6 foot, and a weight between 55 and 168 kilos for a big male. Usually females are a bit smaller. The estimated population worldwide is about 350,000 to 500,000, so about 500,000. And the populations as a whole, there are certain populations around like places like United Kingdom, Canada, where they are threatened by fisheries just because of like overfishing and getting caught in nets. That's a big problem for marine mammals. And these guys travel about 50 kilometers a day searching for food, and they even been known to go into rivers to find food. They tend to eat whatever they can: salmon, sea bass, herring, squid, mollusks, pretty much whatever they can. So they're solitary, but they're gregarious when they haul out and during the breeding season, although they do not form large groups like seals. They kind of just haul out in smaller groups. They tend to be coastal. They don't really go for more 20 kilometers offshore. Or 20 meters, that's not very far. And these guys are polyamorous, so they kind of just mate with whoever they want to. So every year, that's when they give birth to their pups, and it can vary within the locales. So it just depends where they live, where they might have their pups. So, like other seals, they spend a great deal of time when they're molting, and also when they're breeding. So that's when their babies suckle, and when they also molt, so it's kind of time together. And I think these guys are very cute anyway, especially the babies. So when compared to others, these guys are very, very vocal. They do not create vocalizations, and they seem to be doing pretty well. Their survival rates are pretty good, and they're not in increased danger of extinction. But, like other species that live in the Arctic, global warming and climate change does have a big impact on the sea ice, and that's probably going to impact them a lot during the future. But look at these cute babies. We're going to distract from the glaring issues of climate change with these cute baby seals, and they look very cute. They look like friend shapes. Incredible. I love these seals. They're cool. And now we're going to be heading to North America. We've got some cougars. I've already covered a different mod of these guys, but now these guys are new species and another person made it, and we even got a white cougar. So that's pretty cool. This is an albino one. We'll grab a regular one. So we'll have a look at this one. So this is the also known as the mountain lion and the panther or the puma. These guys range across North and South America. These guys are the second largest cat in the New World after jaguar and crepuscular and nocturnal, so they've been used to come out anytime except the middle of the day. So these guys pretty much eat whatever they can. They eat rodents, they primarily eat ungulates, they can even eat things like deer and elk. And while large, they're not always the apex predator in their ecosystems. Often jaguars, wolves, grizzly bears can scare them off. And even American alligators. So these guys get quite big. They are the fourth largest cat species worldwide. So they stand about 60 to 90 centimeters at the shoulder, and adult males get to about 2.4 meters long from nose to tail tip, with females about 2.5. So about the same size, slightly bigger. And the males generally between 53 and 100 kilos, averaging about 68 kilos, and females weigh between 29 and 64 and averaging 55. So they get the smallest around the equator. This is called Bergman's rule, where often during the equator the animals get smaller, but during the poles in both North and South America, they get slightly larger because bigger animals are better at conserving body heat. So there is wide variation because they live in such a huge range. There's different populations. There are only two subspecies. There's the North American Puma and the South American Puma, which are descended from a population that was very small. There was a genetic bottleneck about 10,000 years ago. So these guys are descended from a small group, even though there's very different in appearance, very visually. And these guys, as I mentioned, live all across North and South America. The northern part is like the northern Yukon Territory, and the most southern parts is the other Andes. And the big issue for these guys is getting into, like, with people, like other big cats and other big animals. They get into conflict with people about farming and stuff, so that's very dangerous. And these guys generally eat anything anyway. They'll eat, if they get a goat, they'll dig into a goat. They'll even eat mule deer, white-tailed deer, bull moose can be taken sometimes, bighorn and Dall sheep, horses, caribou, fallow deer, American badgers, and pronghorn. It really just depends what there is. And females reach about sexual maturity about 1.5 years to 3 years of age, and have 1 litter every 2 or 3 years throughout their lives. And though this period can be as short as 1 year in certain areas, they're estrus for about 8 days, and then their gestation period is probably 91 days. And they are sometimes considered monogamous, but it's uncertain, and polygamy is more common. So litter size usually varies between 1 and 6 cubs, typically about 2 cubs. And they're born like normal cats, blind and defenseless, all that. Like Ormotion talked about the babies. Where's the babies? Where's the baby? I'm trying to find him. There he is. No, that's not what I want to click on. So this guy's cute. So yeah, these babies have like these really cool patterns, spotted pattern, and the survival rate is usually just 1 per litter, so that sucks. But there's a lot of competition for these guys, and any animal really that's at risk. And the general life expectancy after they leave their parents, which is about after 2 years, they generally leave their parents. So these guys average around 8 to 13 years in the wild. But there has been a female that was on Vancouver Island that was killed, that was believed to be 18 years old. And in captivity they may live up to about 20 years. So these guys are considered least concerned, but there are populations that are endangered, like the Florida panther. That's usually about 87 individuals. So even though they aren't endangered as a whole species, there are populations that are at risk. So a lot of the areas they aren't really protected, except Florida, but they are really just... Texas is where they usually aren't protected, but they're generally protected around most of the United States and different areas. It's really so many different states' laws, you can't really sometimes tell. But Texas doesn't seem to protect them, but we know what Texas is like. And like other large carnivores, they often have to deal with people and taking out livestock. And livestock obviously takes a lot of the native prey, and obviously hunters don't like cougars killing the livestock, so they often put a bullet in them, which sucks. And yeah, there have been hybrids of these guys with leopards, which, believe it or not, which is really, really interesting. And yeah, I believe this covers them pretty well. We got like an albino one there and an albino one here. That was quite lucky of us, I think. Very, very cute. They did a good job at this one. So now we're going to move on to the next animal. We have got another big cat, but we're going to Russia this time. We have got the Amur Leopard. So the Amur Leopard is a subspecies of leopard, one of the 8, that lives around northern China and southeastern Russia. And as of 2007, there were estimated to only be 19 to 26 wild leopards living in the wild. And as of 2015, fewer than 60 survived in China and Russia. So, but there have been surveys that suggest that the population now, as of 2019, is close to 90 leopards. So these guys differ from other leopard subspecies as they have a thick pale fur and they are a lot hairier. And these guys occupy an area of about 7,000 square kilometers now. And these guys are very well monitored since they are such an endangered subspecies. They are monitored across northern and northeastern China, the Huchen National Park, and a couple parks in Russia. And knowing these guys, their prehistoric range was into Korea. They lived near Beijing and in Korea, even around the Sea of Japan. So their populations was really, really constricted by human hunting. So they were extirpated by the Korean peninsula under Japanese rules. There was at least 624 leopards killed during that occupation of South Korea. And the last known leopard in South Korea was killed in 1970, where they are considered locally extinct. There may be efforts to reintroduce them. So they're not too different from other leopards. They reach sexual maturity about 2 or 3 years old, and they're able to reproduce up to about 10 to 15 years old. Gestation lasts for them about 90 to 105 days, and the newborns weigh about 500 to 700 grams. And they open their mouth about the 7th day of life. We'll have to look at the babies. The babies that I got here are all black. They're melanistic. They don't look too bad though. I think that's cute. So the big issue about these guys is, since they're so endangered, they're very, very at risk from poaching, of both them and their prey species, habitat loss and deforestation. And also, since they are such a small population, there's a big risk of inbreeding and inbreeding depression. And there's also been the case of a wild Amur leopard that was found with canine distemper virus, which is very, very worrying because these guys really affect African wild dogs as well and all sorts of predators, so it's a very, very bad thing. And also competition with tigers, since there's if the densities of large and medium-sized prey is low, the tigers will kind of take over and get rid of the competition. So you really need healthy ecosystems to support the tigers and the leopards. Well, we're quite lucky. There's no been evidence of poaching for a while now. So the last sort of evidence was about 2003. So as of now, the population is to be very, very protected and is well managed. So it's good that when it's that small. And also there's been lots of habitat degradation around the area, development projects. And you can't really... And there have been efforts in captivity to breed them. There's a few zoos that hold them around the world, especially like Vladimir Putin. He's been very, very interested in conservation of both these guys and Siberian tigers. They've kind of been introducing them to different areas around Russia, especially around the northeast. So there is a bunch of captivity, so it's very possible that we could get a nice population going, but that will take some time, of course. I think these guys are definitely worth protecting. Amur leopards are a very cool bunch. I feel like the two most notable species or subspecies that could be included in games, the African leopard and the Amur leopard, just because of how rare it is, and its habitat is very distinct. Kind of similar vein of how the Bengal and the Siberian tiger were in the game already go. Still very cool. And next, we have got another little famous animal everyone's been calling for. We're going to be still in North America. We're going to be going around. This is the red fox. So this is a remaster of a mod, so it's kind of 2-in-1. So these guys are sadly one of the top 100 worst invasive species, especially in Australia, where they cause a lot of ecological damage. But other than that, they have a very wide range. They can be found in North America, Europe, and Asia, and even North Africa. So they have a very, very wide range. And the word fox is great. So there's Vulpes vulpes is their scientific name. But there have been like Vulpes vulpes, which is believed to be the genetic population of North American foxes, which are split about 400,000 years ago, I think. But there is some that have been introduced from Europe, so it's kind of a muddy mess, you know how taxonomy be. So these guys are the largest species in the genus, and they are much lighter than dogs of a similar size in Canis. They reach to about an average 35 to 50 centimeters high at the shoulder and about 45 to 90 centimeters in body length. And they weigh between... the largest one known was about 17.2 kilos and 4'7", and was killed in 2012. So these guys can get quite big. And a lot of them are prized for their fur. So that's one of the big issues that these guys face, is being hunted for their fur. That was a big issue, especially like back in the early 20th century. But it seems to have lessened now. But these guys just have a remarkable knack of bouncing back. And these guys get all sorts of different color morphs as well, so that really helps bolster them. So these guys occur in around 70 million square kilometers, including the Arctic Circle, all across Asia and Africa, north of the Sahara Desert, and the extreme southeast. So that's a huge area, 70 million square kilometers. And the only places they're really absent is from Greenland, Iceland, obviously South America. They do live in Mexico, though, and the most northern parts of Siberia, and they're not present in New Zealand and are listed as a prohibited species, so you're not allowed to bring them in under any circumstances. And what sadly is in Australia, they do a lot of damage. They kill a lot of native species like bettongs, numbats, bilbies, quokkas, and different wallaby species. These guys have a stable home range and use urine to mark their territories. And similar to other dogs and cat species, obviously they maintain it, and that's where they get their food, and they defend it if they need to. So they reproduce every spring, once a year, and 2 months prior they go into estrus, and that's where they kind of get their going on, where they copulate, and then they have their babies. The gestation usually lasts about 49 to 58 days, and usually the litter averages between 4 and 6 kits, and the litters up to 13 have occurred, and usually these larger litters occur where there's high mortality. And speaking of kits, we're going to have a look at the little fox here. Isn't he cute? So these guys live in these really intricate dens, and they even use burrows of other animals that they steal, even gerbil colonies and stuff. And I think that's pretty cool. They can get to about 17 meters deep and average about 5 to 7 meters. So that's usually not too deep. And the average, they sleep around... They may share their dens with woodchucks and badgers, and a lot of species do that, and they use... they usually clean the areas and defecate in latrines, where they leave pieces of food around the den. And they average sleep about 9.8 hours, considering the captive foxes. So these guys eat pretty much just about anything. They've got a very varied diet. They'll eat moles, hamsters, gerbils, deer mice, opossums, reptiles, invertebrates, even marine mammals and stuff on very rare occasions. Even attack small ungulates as well. And also eat a lot of fruit. They'll eat blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, apples, plums, acorn, and even eat grasses and sedges. Which is awesome. So these guys obviously are very prominent in like a lot of folklore. Like even just as recently as Fantastic Mr. Fox and They're a very prominent animal in European culture, and these guys are commonly hunted. And one of the big things is that they're bred for the fur trade, and is believed to be about 500,000 skins are exported annually from Germany to Russia, and the total worldwide trade of wild red foxes from 1985 to 86 was 1.5 million pelts. And red foxes accounted for 45 of the US caught pelts worth over 50 million. Oh, sorry. So these guys are also domesticated. There's really a lot you can say about these guys. These guys have also been, people try and domesticate. There's even experiments where people have, over like a 40-year period, tried to domesticate silver foxes and trying to get them used to people, which to some success it's worked well, but domestication does take a little bit longer than that. See, these guys kind of live wherever they can. They live in cities and often are considered a pest. But they are an animal with a very, very well studied and a complicated history, and I think they're pretty cute. So here's a good guy. Oh, he's gold too. I think these foxes are very cute and very fluffy. Really interesting to see if you get these guys in game. I think they make a good zoo animal. And we're going to go back to South America again. Last but not least, we have got the maned wolf. And I love that baby. So we're going to have a look at the male. No, that's not what we wanted. So this is a fox on stilts. I like how people call it that. It's a fox on stilts. So this is the maned wolf, which is a large canid from South America. These are the largest canids in South America. They get between 20 to 30 kilos and up to 90 centimeters at the withers. So they're very, very tall. And these guys are very important for these ecosystems they live in. They are crepuscular and omnivorous, so they've adapted to the South American savanna, and they pretty much eat whatever they can. But there is a special fruit called the wolf apple, where they specifically spread the seeds of those. So that's why they're very important symbiotic relationship with these guys. So these guys live in open to semi-open arid habitats, especially grasslands around the Cerrado, which is southeastern Brazil, northern Argentina, east and north of the Andes, and are very rare in Uruguay, and possibly being displaced through loss of habitat, sadly. These guys are very, very weird. So these guys are a twilight animal and are more active around, depending on the humidity and the temperature, similar to bush hogs. They're usually active around 8 to 10 a.m. and around 8 to 10 p.m. So they can be active all day on cloudy days. They're very cute when they're sleeping. So these guys are solitary and do not live in packs, and they kind of just do their own thing. And monogamous pairs may defend a territory of up to 30 square kilometers. Let's see, I'm playing with their baby. And both of them urinate to maintain their territories, and they have a very distinct odor, which some people liken to hops or cannabis, which I think is funny. And I just think that's hilarious. So they usually live in forests and subplains or whatever they can. They generally prefer open to semi-open habitats. And going to reproduction, I'm going to go talk to these guys. This is the baby. It's got a young maned wolf. Even though they're not related to wolves, they're actually their own clade of South American dogs. So during the reproduction, they usually mate around November to April, and gestation lasts about 65 days. And the litter may have up to 2 to 6 black-faced, black-furred pups like this, which I think is very cute. And they get fully grown at about 1 year old, and during their first year, they rely on their parents to feed them. And when they're born, they get between 340 to 430 grams, and they get into their lives with black fur and becoming red after 10 weeks. So the eyes open about 9 days of age, and they nurse about 4 months old, and they're fed by their parents by their regurgitating after they've been weaned of food. And these guys, as I mentioned, they are omnivorous, so they can eat small mammals, even fish sometimes, but a large part of their diet is vegetation, which includes sugarcane and the wolf apple that I mentioned. So they guys are also known to hunt like pampas deer, giant anteaters, bush dogs, and collared peccary, and are known to actively hunt and scavenge. Is not known, but they are very commonly consumed as well as armadillos. So yeah, and the wolf apple is their most common food item, which is very important. That's a symbiotic relationship that the seeds rely on the wolves to disperse them, which is very weird considering it's a wolf and you think wolf carnivore or all that. But I think these guys are too cute to be hated. So a lot of these guys also, when they defecate on leafcutter ants, where they use the dung to fertilize their own fungus gardens, but then they discard the seeds, so it helps germinate the seeds as well. So it's a very important symbiotic relationship between the leafcutter ants, the wolves, and the wolf apple. So these guys are not considered an endangered species just because they have such a wide range, but they are, of course, their populations are declining and maybe some threat. That's why they are considered near threatened. So their populations are declining, and things like deforestation and destroying of their open habitats, and also spreading from domestic animals, disease and such, can put them at risk. In some areas they are considered endangered to critically endangered, but in most, overall, their population's doing very well. Or they are declining, but they are doing okay. And it really just depends on how locally how they're doing, but overall, doing okay. So these guys, considering the people that live there, they have a very mixed reception. Some people love them or tolerate them, and most of them hate them. And parts of this animal's body is believed to cure things like bronchitis, kidney disease, or even snake bites, which is not true, and also is believed to give good luck. It's kind of the same thing as rhino horn and such. But luckily these guys aren't poached very much. There's no large scale demand for parts of maned wolf, so that's very good compared to things like rhino horn. So these guys are considered a common animal, and that's where they kind of got their names. The Yarawaka is their name for the native name for them. And these wolves really caused apathy in the human populations of the places they live, and been used as a flag species for the Brazilian Cerrado, or the habitat they live in, and they've been represented in coins and such. So yeah, very wonderful animal, and a really nice mod. I have to admit, this is one of my favourites. I don't know why, but I just have a thing for maned wolves. I think they look great. They're like a fox on stilts, and they are just too weird and too awesome. I love them. So yeah, I think this is a good place to end the video for now. Really nice to see these mods, and congratulations for part 10. I've really got to say, I'm really happy that people are still making mods for this game, because even with every update it kind of just breaks, so you have to fix them up again. I'm glad people are persisting, and even with the new species, it's really awesome to see more people getting interested in this game. Planet Zoo seems to be doing very well post-launch compared to Jurassic World Evolution and Planet Zoo, so I hope this keeps up, and I hope to see all you guys' mods coming out, and I'll show them if I think they are worthy enough for showing. I will definitely show them on these videos. We've got plenty of them to come. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to click that little bell icon to get notified when I upload anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, and bye bye.